This is the resales class, so hopefully that's the one you're looking for. I think the stewardship and homeowner services is next door. So awesome to have you here. We'll do some introductions and give a little plan for our session here today. I'm Jim Philbin. I'm the Senior Director of the Community Land Trust program at One Roof Community Housing in Duluth. And been with One Roof for 23 years. In that time, we've added about 350 homes, single-family homes to the land trust, and we've helped facilitate 225 resales. So we have a good track record of actually doing the work. So we have both the hypothetical and the programmatic plans, which are always necessary, but then we also have actually having done the work, and sometimes it doesn't work out as planned, right? So we'll talk about both of those things. And here's my co-presenter.
Hello, everybody. My name is Char. I know that the program says Charlesha, but nobody calls me that by my mom, okay? But yeah, I go by Char. I am the administrative coordinator over at City of Lakes Community Land Trust, and I've been with them about 3 years and have learned just an uber amount of information, very knowledgeable about everything that we do, and I just hope that I put together a really good resales presentation for you guys, as I am the person over there that kind of runs the resales that come through the program.
Just to give us a lay of the land of the room, if you're a land trust and you have not yet done a resale, how many we have of those? Okay, so first, that's great. Or you don't have a house yet even, yeah, okay. Let's say you have a land trust and you've done fewer than 20 resales, so then that's kind of the next group. And then maybe more than 50 resales. No, it's not anybody. Okay, so there you go. Well, Justin. Okay, all right. Well, that's great because hopefully this will be most beneficial for folks. So the kind of outline for today is Char is going to go through how City of Lakes does their resales, the process and procedures, and then I'll do the same for One Roof. There's a lot of overlap, but there's some differences. But then Char also has some great scenarios of what would you do in this case. So that's kind of when the rubber hits the road of, okay, you have your resale formula and you have everything, but then you have this person who's trying to sell, and this is the scenario that's real. And I would just say two things that are probably really obvious, but in terms of resales, especially for folks that are just starting out, maybe haven't done their first house or have only done their first couple of houses. So I've mentioned doing for 23 years, and so almost every house, there's only, I think, 8 houses in the land trust when I started. And so then we began to have our first resales, and what I found over the years in doing it is occasionally, I wish we hadn't brought that home into the trust, And I've got no one to blame for but myself, because I was the one that okayed it. I wish we had done more work on that house at the time that we developed it originally. Or I wish we had made it more affordable up front. And some of those things, you do what you can with the resources you have, right? So I totally get that. But there is a little bit of a kick the can down the road to I just need to get this closed, I just need to get this house done. And to a certain extent, of course, that's true. We have to start somewhere, for sure, so I'm not judging that. But they do come back. When the can gets kicked down, it comes back to you. That's part of the nature of the community land trust model. And so the best and most seamless resales that we've done is when we had a really great product at the start that was affordable at the deepest level we could. It was rehabbed really well, or it was built really well, and you had that really good starting point. The ones that have been more challenging is it wasn't that affordable to begin with, or we couldn't do much rehab at the start, or the house had a bunch of weird issues that we chose to not focus on, hoping somehow they would resolve themselves before the resale came up, and lo and behold, they didn't, and now we had to resolve them. The one good thing about kicking the can down the road was that we have a lot more resources now than we did in 2000 and 2002. So in that sense, it kind of worked, because I was able to now actually fix some things that we didn't quite set up right at the beginning. But the more that you can do up front to really develop your first product as quality and affordability as high as you can get them within the funding and ability that you have, the better it will be for your resales. So let's just speaking to that. So.
Okay. All right. So I put together just some things in following a house CLCLT. Sorry, the City of Lakes Community Land Trust. That's just so long for me to say. So I just say CLCLT, okay? But how we kind of go through our resale process. So whenever a homeowner is inquiring or wants to give me a notice of intent to sell, they will let me know, hey, Shar, I am inquiring about selling my home. What is the process? Or, I know for sure I want to sell this home. What is the process? Okay. Usually we will review and sign a resale policy and procedure document. This is a document that walks the homeowner through the resale process, also educates the homeowner on TISHs, which are truth in sale and housing. And these are, walkthroughs that happen, and the home is evaluated, and of course letting the homeowner know if there are any, they call them RREs, pretty much are required repairs that are needed to be made to the home, or even suggestions of repairs that need to be made to the home. But this document will go through all the walks and steps of the resale process. The homeowner will review it, and usually I send it over to be signed by that person. Once that is done, I use that as a document to then request my appraisal. I order my appraisal from my appraiser, or homeowners are allowed to find their own appraiser if they shall, but I do advise them and let them know to just check with those appraisers, make sure they do their research on those folks and cost and all that stuff. Every appraiser is different, okay? Then I put together the resale document, which I call the resale formula calculation. So I calculate the CLT resale price, and then exercising some of the CLT purchase options, meaning that if there is a situation where a home needs to be purchased back, those are things that I do consider. Eventually, once I am done preparing the resale formula calculation and the net proceeds, I then have what I call like a resale review meeting with the homeowner and their realtor. I find that it is important for the realtor to be present, as some of these realtors may have not sold a CLT home before, may not know the information on how it flows and everything that the listing and everything needs to be entailed. So with that realtor being present, I also discuss with them how to prepare for the marketing and the listing of that home. One of the very first things that I do is asking the homeowner and the realtor for like photos and things like that to start preparing for my marketing. I do market to my internal pipeline first, and I kind of give them a week or two, trying to see what kind of traffic I get on some of the interests of the homes. And then let's say I'm not getting any type of traffic on this home, then we will prepare for listing, okay? And I would end up usually sending over all the buyer guidelines and preparing the purchase agreement addendum along with the photos as like a complete package when I send it over to the realtor to prepare them for the public listing that goes on the MLS. I was speaking about a TISH. So a TISH is a walkthrough that they'll do with like the city. And this person, okay, will come through the home and say, hey, you need to replace your fire alarms, kind of your coding type things. Or they give the homeowner recommendations on what they can repair in the home. That is not required for all styled homes, though. That is only required for single family. So no condos and apartments or anything like that, or townhomes. Yes, sir.
In what circumstance would you use exercise the CLT purchase
purchase option. So, oh, I don't want to give away one of my scenarios, but some of the situations I may have ran into is if a homeowner knew they were looking towards like foreclosure. You know, once I've run the numbers and I can tell that they're clearly $20,000 upside down, you know, and of course, if we feel like, you know, it's a quality home, so on and so forth, and we just don't want to go through the rigmarole, we'll go ahead and recapture. But that step is not always exercised all the time in all scenarios. Okay, so here is something that I put together just based on my experience with talking to folks on the phone when it comes to their resales. I felt like, much like today, I'm just jabbing off a lot of information. A lot of people kind of forget, don't really know where we're at in the processes as we're doing a resale. So I felt like putting together a visual for folks would help a lot for my homeowners. So this is one of the first things that I implement anytime somebody comes to me discussing a resale or even an inquiry. So the blue side here are for those who are inquiring about their home. Okay, this is someone that just calls in and says, "Hey, Shar, I just want to know what my numbers look like. What is kind of the estimate that my home is appraised at, you know, for the year?" So in this case, they call me and say, "Hey, I'm inquiring." I then collect all the information from them, just name and property, just some of the just the general info about the home. And at some point, I will order what we call a CMA, the comparative market analysis. That's kind of where I get my soft appraisal. I just say soft because those numbers are not concrete. Um, and then again, I prepare the resale formula calculation and the net proceeds based off that information. One step that I did miss in between here is that I request a loan payoff statement from the homeowner. That gives me kind of just a realistic view, financial, where they are currently, and you know, allows me to kind of work with some of the numbers to get an estimate of what we would be looking at. Yes, sir. It's the CLT. Oh, yes, the appreciation. Yes, sir. Yes. Sorry. Yep. It's a 25% to the homeowner, 75% staying with the home, i.e., CLCLT. Okay. Let's see here where we are. Once I prepare those documents again, I then again discuss them with the homeowner. That homeowner, I leave them kind of the space to say, hey, you know what, Shar, looking at these numbers, I don't really like these numbers. I'm going to just stay in the home. Or I really like these numbers, Shar. Can I switch over to true intent to sell? So the purple line here is the true intent to sell. Same thing, they will end up contacting me and letting me know in writing that I'm serious about selling my home here at property such and such. And let me see, homeowner notices. Again, I order the appraisal. Once I get that signed policy and procedure document back from that homeowner, they again go and request their mortgage payoff statement. I use those numbers. These numbers from the appraisal, though, are more concrete. Okay, and I do prepare the resale formula calculation and the net proceeds, again using those numbers, and then we schedule that same resale meeting that I was just kind of talking about a second ago, along with the realtor being present. Let's see here. So the orange side here is where we were talking about the homeowner orders a TIsh. So I kind of call these some of like the post things that a homeowner should do once the resale meeting is done. And I just let them be aware of it, especially during like COVID, because when people were calling 311 for like the TIsh, those appointments were kind of far out. So I was trying to kind of position people to kind of be ahead of the game with getting those ordered and any type of disclosures that are needed. The CLCLT at some point does inspect the property. We'll go over there and look through it, or have Osborne, who's our realtor, gone over there and check it out. Homeowner engages with the realtor or the listing agreement, and then eventually an executive purchase agreement is made. Yes, ma'am. Yep. they can use an outside realtor, whoever they would like. Only thing I always advise is that your realtor be educated on CLT properties. Not all of them know, how it functions and how it goes.
Do the realtors interact if they use an outside, entity because
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because a lot of the information that realtor would need to know will come directly from me. So in these resale meetings, me and that realtor will exchange information and pretty much moving forward with getting all the correct information listed and everything for the MLS. There's a lot of small details, that goes into like the purchase agreements and the buyer guidelines and things like that. And on the average, your average realtor doesn't know that information needs to be implemented, in the listing and stuff. So yeah. I saw somebody's hand up. Was it you?
I was going to ask more about the TISH, but it sounds like that's required in some jurisdictions.
Mm-hmm. Yep. From Minneapolis for sure.
Okay. So for you all, city inspectors just do that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And they are required, the homeowners are required to do so. Yeah. Now, I do get questions all the time. Do I have to do everything that this person listed on the TISH? No, is the answer. However, you know, I think it is always good to not only do the required things, but consider, what changes you would need to make if you were a new homeowner looking to move into a home, you know? Yes, sir.
I have another question about the TIsh as well.
Hmm.
Does the appraiser use any of that information to evaluate the value
No,
of the home?
no, no. Okay. Jim, we can go to the next slide. And that visual helps so much because as soon as a homeowner says, well, where am I at in the process? You are on block number 3. This is where we are. Okay. Okay, so some of the policies and practices that we use here at CLCLT. As mentioned, I prepare a net proceeds document, and that net proceeds document is just detailed down to the finest line. And it just displays what the new resale price would be, any of the standard, let's say, state taxes, fees, and all of that stuff, realtors' fees, any type of closing cost. One of the main things that I always like to implement on there is any down payment assistances. A lot of people forget that they've gotten these down payment assistances on the front end of their deal, and they may or may not know the details to the down payment assistances, meaning if they have to pay it back or if it expired, so on and so forth. So when I do the research on the homeowners, I like to make sure that I put it on there and display if it expires or any type of need-to-know information. Um, let's see, whatever the current mortgage.
I brought our net proceeds sheet, and I'm going to show it so you can see what that looks like, because that's real helpful. I compliment that. So.
Mm-hmm. Again, I request whatever the current mortgage payoff is, especially after COVID. A lot of folks did deferments and things like that, or are just trying to catch up. So that is just a stickler for me right now, making sure that I'm getting those documents and just all the need to know information on those. Figures and numbers, it's just important for it to be accurate. I'm checking in to see if there's any past due lease fees. Every once in a while, there may be somebody who may be past due, and I just don't want to forget that when it comes to the net proceeds, because these are all transactions that will flow through this one transaction here. Let's see, any estimate of any realtor fees. I do like to encourage any homeowner to talk with their realtor and discuss with them what their commissions are and different things like that, because all of them are different. When you're looking at this net pro sheet, when Jim does go and show it to you, I think for any homeowner, it just gives them a full detail on things that, they probably wouldn't even consider thinking about. And when the numbers are sitting in your face, it kind of hits a little different, when you can really see it. There's some CLT resale fees in there, marketing and listing options, and then resale inspection, and then the CLT buyer guidelines and purchase agreement addendums that I prepare as well.
I'm sorry if I missed this, but like obviously with selling a CLT home, there's to make all this happen.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering if there's any part in the policy where, typically I believe as a seller, you could back out of any deal until you sign a contract.
Correct. Correct. And I've had that happen to me.
Does it work the same way? Like, there's that, because you mentioned that they sign a policy, so there's
Mhm.
no, like,
Mhm.
policy that basically says, like, once the CLT does all this work,
Yeah.
you can back out at any time.
Yep. And that's the truth, because the reality of the situation is that I've had that happen to me. And if you tell me that, I mean, it doesn't matter even after, let's say, our resale meeting. You know, if you say, hey, you know what, Shar, I'm just going to call this off, it's off. You know, until you are ready to move forward, bless you. Until you are ready to move forward, it's off. Until then. Okay. So we have some of the resale nuances. These are some of the things that I deal with when the homeowner is not so happy at this point. But definitely feel free to chime in and ask questions, or if you guys have had any related experiences as well. But one of the main things is misunderstanding the equity share. Anytime it comes down to this resale thing, the first thing a person says to me is, nobody told me about the 25%. You guys lied to me. No. We require that all homeowners read their ground leases and read their documents with a lawyer. I do encourage all of my homeowners when I talk to them, it is so important that you know your homeowner business, okay? So that we can avoid, that portion when it comes that I didn't know. But I do re-explain what the equity split is between the CLT and the homeowner. Some of them give me a little pushback, but when it boils down to it, it's all in the writing. Um, Reimbursement costs of any home improvements. So we have it to where now at CLT, if you do any capital improvements, we have a policy for that. Okay? You are to request, send in a capital improvements request. Let's just say, for the sake of it, it's a kitchen remodel. You will send in the request along with details to it, floor plans, budgets, and all of that stuff. It is then presented to who we call the PDC, Project Development Committee, and they approve or decline these capital improvement requests. These capital improvements are documented, just so we can know that you've added a new porch to your home and so on and so forth. But also, too, a couple of things with that is that people assume that they get 100% of their material cost for their capital improvement. This is the part where I kind of come in and say, no, but that you only get whatever the value of the capital improvement is. You do get 100% of the value of the capital improvement. And on that resale formula calculation sheet, whatever that amount is, I will implement it on there and add that to your net proceeds as well. Okay? Yes, sir.
Sorry, I know we're not talking about capital improvements in this session, but does that mean that based on the resale formula that they get a 20%, 25%
Mm-hmm.
increase plus the value of their capital improvement? So it
Correct.
ends up being like 27%.
Could be. Yep. Yep.
How is that value of improvements determined? Does an appraiser come through?
Yep, at the time, for those that follow the policy, okay? For those that follow the policy, an appraiser comes, and gives whatever the value is. However, there's that person that does not follow the policy. That person's project and their value will be included on that resale appraisal that happens at the end. Okay? Let's see where we are. Okay, so we talked about the impact of down payment assistance. Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever had a situation where the amount of equity that they've got doesn't cover repayment of their down payment assistance?
Yes. Yes.
So they end up owing money they don't have.
Sometimes. 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 Yeah, yeah, that's one of our scenarios. Yeah, so some of these I've made into scenarios so we can talk. But most of the time, if a person is upside down, they may have to bring a check to closing, just depending, on the situation. Um, the impact of down payment assistance, as I mentioned, I just always go through that with a lot of folks, either encouraging folks to know about their down payment assistance and all the details. I personally was unaware that even some of them decrease every single year. There's so many different kinds. They expire maybe after 5 years, 10 years. Some of them, they have to be paid back on refinance or resale anyway. I think what kind of gets a lot of folks is that I want to say the average down payment that I've seen is 10,500. So if I'm only due to get back 3,000, and that 10,500 is coming off the top, I'm kind of upside down already. So I do let folks know, just make sure that you read this stuff. 30,000 sounds really good on the front end, but what about when it's time to pay it back? Realtor fees. Again, I always just implement to people to conversate with their realtors. Make sure that you understand the fees and things that you're being charged for the transaction. A lot of people don't know until I print out that net proceeds sheet, and I just kind of design mine for the worst case scenario at 6%, which is kind of like the highest most realtors may charge. But when they see that it says 12,000 or 9,000, they're like, whoa, wait, let me think about this. Okay? The length of time on the market. Some homeowners can get upset that their home has been on the market for months, maybe even a year. There's a slew of things that can be causing that home to be still on the market, why people are not interested in it. I personally find that sometimes it's the smallest things that will turn a buyer off. So when I am doing these resale meetings, I talk a lot about staging and what people can do to kind of brighten up a room and just make it more attractive to those who are doing the tours. I've had some folks get really upset. I think that my house is beautiful. Well, why can't I sell? Well, when the people come, and I'm doing reviews on what the people are saying as they're doing the tours. Well, some people feel like the home is too cluttered. The home is too dark. They can't envision themselves there, or it's hard for them to get a tour. You're always at the house when somebody wants to tour. But these are simple things that may turn people off. It's always good to listen to the people. I think they will tell you kind of what's attractive to them and what's not. What's the condition of the property. And then not exercising the CLT purchase options. Some people might get upset that you don't want to repurchase their home and they have to go through the whole MLS listing process, because we don't recapture or repurchase homes always in every scenario.
Your sellers are working with their own realtor as well to sell their home? You're not acting in that role?
Nope, I'm not. Nope. And sometimes, oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. So with many of the homes, we do have a realtor. His name is Osborne. If we have a home that comes up and he needs to represent that home, absolutely. But he's not required all the time, you know. For many of the homeowners that come forward, though, with their realtors, it's going to be up to that realtor to do all the marketing, work that goes into it. Now, I do have my hands in it, to kind of keep that bridge there, because I have folks as far as like incoming applications, interest, phone calls. I do a bunch of stuff over at CLT. So I like to kind of keep in the loop too, because I kind of want to know what's going on, and especially if I'm getting new inquiries of people calling all the time, I just want to know off the top of my head, hey, I got this property, here's the details, so on and so forth. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
On the previous slide, you had mentioned CLT resale fees. I was just curious if you could elaborate just briefly.
Yep. So a lot of the main thing is that they're just like admin fees. So I believe that they are like $500. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious about, you said length of time. One of my biggest concerns is that in our community, the housing buying market is so incredibly competitive
Mm-hmm.
and it's so fast paced.
Yep.
That one of my concerns is like, how much time will it take my buyers to find an eligible
Mm-hmm.
homeowner or
Yeah.
Can you maybe speak a little bit to that? Like, is there a time where it's been, 60 days on the market, their realtor simply isn't helping them find the right buyer?
Mhm.
Is
Mhm.
there a moment when you would say, okay, we're going to exercise our option
Mhm.
just so that you can be more competitive?
Yeah. So in a particular situation, I had this home had been on the market for about 6 months at the time, and the homeowner was just very frustrated, I think, with us, with just the whole process of it all, waiting. So what Osborne and the team had decided to do was pull the home off of the market. Let's go back to the drawing board. Let's see what we can do to try to draw in some of these potential buyers, which is where we kind of got this whole staging thing and changing the paint and all that type of stuff to try to draw them in more. Yeah. I think that sometimes the journey of buying the house can get a little muddy, because as much as I want this property to be attractive, that person has to be able to envision themselves in there and has to want to, you know. Unfortunately, we don't always get to control how long a house is on the market or why it's not getting any interest, you know. But I do try to get the reviews of the tours to see what's turning people off from it. Is that it for questions? Yes, sir.
This understanding about the shared equity
Mm-hmm.
piece, have you found language that's more favorable to use or less favorable to use? So, for example, at First Homes where I work, sometimes some of our staff has said, you're splitting the equity with First Homes.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's not always well received.
Mm-mm.
How would you phrase it?
So I've gotten in trouble for that. It's the wording, what I'm saying, split or your cut or your share. I've just had to start saying like your share of equity because the words can get a little testy. Where people like your cut. What do you mean your cut? What cut are you getting? You know, but just your share of equity is kind of how I've had to implement that. I do hit on that topic though very broadly when it comes to our orientations because in the experience that's one of the first things people say is that I'm unaware of this. So I go into meat and potatoes on that section in orientation. Okay. Anybody else?
I just want to make a comment. I talk about the subsidy that was brought to the table at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of cools things off a little bit. Like, wow, you got into this house, for $20,000 less than private market. And so,
Yeah.
and we're going to take our part and reinvest it
Mm-hmm.
into, another home.
I do have to kind of backline kind of that sentence and say, well, that the CLT 75% share doesn't necessarily come to us as a check. It stays with the property so that it can stay affordable for them. So that kind of comes across, but, huh?
And at that point, they're already in the home. We
Mm-hmm.
have that issue too, where a lot of people are not receptive to CLTs in the sense of, especially like some of our BIPOC clients,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like a sense of paying it forward or
Yep.
something like
Yep.
that. And they're like, well, reparations, why do we have to?
Yeah.
And it's tough, but I guess like it's not astonishing to me, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, it's like, dang, like
Yeah.
you have all of these touch points of information that
Yep.
you're trying to ensure that they understand what they're opting into, and
Yep.
they're still gonna be that.
Yep. That guy.
So
I didn't know.
yeah,
Yeah, and I let them know, hey, this amount of affordability helped you. In the same way it helped you, it's going to help the next person and the next person. One person just told me, well, nobody else helped me. Why should I help them? Well, we did, you know? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
With realtor fees, do you find that those commissions, potentially 6%,
Hmm.
are eating up people's equity really quickly?
Oh, yeah.
Been part of that? Is there anyone in the room that does that part of the formula any different?
Yeah, I do find that it eats it up really quickly because it's usually a pretty decent amount that's there. Like I say, 9,000, 12,000, just depending on what the amount is, right? But if I've already got 10,500 in down payment assistance I'm paying back, and then I'm paying a realtor 10,000 on top of that, that's 20,000 off of my net proceeds instantly.
So they're incentivized to use the in-house realtor, or the fees come no matter what?
I don't encourage either way. I let them know they can choose their own realtor or they can choose to work with, our. They do pay the fees. Now, here's something that our particular realtor does. He does what he calls a facilitation fee. Okay, facilitation fee is where we don't have to do any of the MLS marketing and all that stuff. We might already have an internal buyer. In that case, he just has a flat fee that he charges, way less than the 6%, and that seems to help in many situations. A facilitation fee. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So has any of the CLT buyers bid for sale by owner to eliminate that fee?
I'm sorry, let me come closer.
Have they done any for sale by owner to eliminate those fees that are coming out of their equity?
We have had.
They're part of your program that they have to use a realtor.
Well, it's a part of the program that they have to use a realtor because CLT will not serve or represent you pretty much as a realtor in the transaction.
Right, but you can buy or sell 5 properties without a realtor.
Oh,
You have to use a licensed realtor. You can do 5 transactions in the state of Minnesota without a realtor.
okay.
So I'm saying, have some of your homeowners did a for sale by owner to eliminate that
Oh, no, ma'am.
procedure that they must use a realtor?
No, ma'am. None of them have. And I think just in general, many. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Can they do that if they chose?
If they are, let's say, educated enough on realtor and how the transaction goes, absolutely. But I think what has happened even prior to my existing is that there's some folks that will try to do so and then make CLT kind of serve as the realtor in the transaction. Where either they need to know the information or have a realtor. But no, my experience I haven't had anyone so far.
We do it differently with realtors, so I'll get into that when we do our piece of it. And just a couple of other general observations. One is on the language, which is really important, and Shar got right to that at the end there about, the way we say it is that we make a distinction between appreciation and equity, right? Because they get 100% of the equity that they've earned by paying down the principal on their mortgage, and that's really important. They're not sharing that with anybody, right? They pay that down, and they get 100% of the value of any capital improvements, right? Not the cost, but the value. I'll get 100% of that. And then they get 25% of any increase in the market value of the home, right? And the other 75% of the increase in the market value of the home is reinvested in that house to keep it affordable for the next family that comes after them. So we never say one roof gets 75% because that does create a false sense that we're like taking their money or something. And another just general observation is we found there's a direct relationship between stewardship and successful resales, right? So if you have a good relationship, an ongoing communication with them while they're homeowners on any number of things. It could be fun things, community building things, it could be problem solving issues, it could be water heater replacements, whatever it is, that when they go to sell, they are already coming in with a positive experience because, I've contacted you a dozen times over the years, you've always been super helpful, and now you're gonna help me with this, as opposed to, I've never heard from you, and now you're imposing these restrictions on me when I want to just move on with my life. So that stewardship is, I know it's hard at the beginning. You're like, well, how can I do it all? But it's not something you want to wait on, right? Because if you can build it in from the beginning, it's really it really helps for resales. So our process is very similar to City of Lakes with just a few different nuances. We are also appraisal based, and we actually had a formula where we wanted to separate the land out from the house because we're land trusts. So we used to have that they got 30% of the increase in the value of the house. But then we realized appraisers was really all over the map with how they valued land on an existing home. It's wildly different, whereas the value they gave to the entire property was fairly consistent. So then we went to 25% of just the entire property, land and house combined, whatever increase there is in value. So same thing that the seller will contact us, and don't worry if you can't read it, you'll get these handouts. And they will contact us, and like Charlesha said, we do the same kind of soft information, because a lot of them will first say, well, I just want to get an idea, how much would I make if I were to sell right now? And then we say, okay, we can give you that, because we know what the market is right now for your homes, and you give us a copy of your mortgage payoff statement, which is also, again, echoing what Char said, because if you just say, what do you owe? I think it's around 90, and then you get their statement and it's 110, and you're like, okay, well, that kind of changes things. I just gave you really bad information based on what you gave me. So get a copy of their current mortgage statement. We have all the records of all the loans that they took out, the second mortgages, and so that way we do our resale analysis, which we call it, which I'll go over here. But we say, okay, well, if you were to sell today, you would net $15,000, or you would owe $2,000 or whatever. Do you want to move forward? So very, very similar scenario. And then if they say, yep, that sounds good, let's move forward, then we order the appraisal, right? Because we are appraisal based, so we don't use, you can't just use a market analysis. Even realtors say, well, it's in this range, and we have to use the appraisal, which takes time for the appraiser to go there and order and all that. And so then once we have the appraisal back, then we have the formal net proceeds sheet, because now we have the actual hard concrete numbers, and we go through that and we explain, here's what your proceeds are going to be. What's different, where we're a little different, is on the realty side, is that partly it was out of necessity, but up in Duluth, there just aren't as many entities up there doing things. You got to do more yourself, and so we became our own brokerage quite a long time ago, because we wanted to be able to represent land trust sellers. We were originally a limited broker to list our own properties, which we could do because we owned them, but on a resale we didn't own them. So I thought, well, how are we going to help these folks? So we'll become a full broker. So that was something I kind of backed into, as wasn't a part of the plan, but now I'm the broker for One Roof as well. And so we are fully participating brokerage in Minnesota. And of course what that also does is it's part of, in Jeff's class on organizational sustainability, our revenue from our brokerage is significant at this point. All of the homes that we newly develop, we're the listing agent for. 99% of the resales we're the listing agent for. We represent the buyer 50% of the time. So, and we don't say, well, because One Roof's doing it, we will just lower the price. We say, no, these are the legitimate costs involved in this transaction, and we are serving this role as a realtor, which is a very different role than as a developer. So, we can claim the fees in both ways. And that's been very key for our organizational sustainability. So in that case, then we do, as a licensed realtor, then we do have to, we sign the listing agreement. We go through all of that with our home buyers as well. Yeah.
In that scenario, are you saying that your CLT is charging a 6% brokerage fee in addition to the CLT resale admin?
No, because we are the brokerage, we don't charge the admin fees. Yeah, so we only charge the commission fees, right? And we don't say you have to use the land trust, right? Same thing that if they have the choice of who they want to use, but we do say, which is the absolute truth, nobody knows how to sell community land trust homes better than we do. Like, we are the expert, and that's not debatable. So we really are the best in the business when it comes to selling community land trust homes. So you can go and use another realtor, and you will pay the same or more, and they will have to figure out how to do this and how all this works, right? And what's been kind of cool is we've developed now a very good relationship with other realtors over the years. They've seen, because we pay a full commission and because they realized, oh, this opens up a market for my buyers. Like I couldn't have helped this buyer, but now with the land trust program I can. And so many of the realtors will say, yeah, and I don't want to list your homes. I got enough to do with my regular houses. I don't want to figure out the land trust and list that. So they're even happy to say, you just do it. We've had a handful of realtors that have listed them, and that's fine. It can work. but we found we still have to step in and do almost as much work as we do when we're the listing agent, and for no money, So it's kind of, that's where then we could take that admin fee, like, okay, we can at least pay ourselves something for the work involved here. So this is, again, all this is available later, but so, we have the resale formula price, and then from that, we can add some things on top of it, over and above the resale formula price, as long as the percentage of what the original buyer paid as compared to the market value is no worse than at the resale time. And I think the spreadsheet will make that a little clearer. So maybe I'll jump into that. And actually, let me just, one other thing. What we don't have is that home inspection piece. In Duluth, we used to, for a time, we had our own staff, our own construction staff, go through and do a pre-resale inspection. Okay, you're thinking you're going to sell your home. Let us go through and do an inspection on it and identify the things that you might want to need to address. The problem with that, again, was always, okay, well, which things should I address? And do I have to address them? And then how much time is that going to take? I want to get my home listed. So what we realized was we want to, as much as possible, there's already all these restrictions we know in the land trust model, so wherever we can is to mirror the normal process, so they don't feel like there's outliers, right? So most people, when they're ready to list, or many times they're ready to list now. They don't want to wait 60 days to list their home, right? So we move very quickly on getting the analysis, getting the appraisal in, and getting their home listed for them. And so if we had to also then work out home repairs before even listing it, just imagine the delay that would involve. And we realized, well, we're requiring that the new buyers all have home inspections. That's just a responsible way to manage a program. And so that home inspection is going to happen, and it's going to call out any code issues or any other issues. And then the buyer and seller can negotiate just as any other buyer and seller would on, well, this is what the seller or buyer would like you to do, this is what the seller is willing to do, those kind of pieces. Yeah.
I'm just curious though, I mean, do you talk to them about how the condition of the home or even certain elements, small changes they could make would impact their appraisal? I mean, that, you know what I'm saying? So that's money in their pocket if they need repaint a room or replace a few windows or.
So, yeah, our experience, and your markets might be different, but our experience is that the things that our homeowners would do to get it marketable would not affect the appraised value. If they repaint it, if they fix a broken window, replace a storm door, these are all things that might be requested, but the appraisal is just they don't even look at that level of detail. If there was something significant, the furnace isn't working, whatever, but and I've talked to the appraiser about this, in fact, because I kind of wondered the same thing. It's well, should we have them clean up the clutter and do all these other things to? He's like, no, it's not going to affect my value. I'm looking at comps based on the condition, kind of good, above, average, very good, but it doesn't have a lot of effect on the appraised value. It certainly can have an effect on the buyer, on the marketing of the home for sure, right? So we say, imagine you want to buy this home. How do you want it to look? And the sellers, like you've all experienced, are, in this hot market, they don't have to work as hard because of our resale formula and our prices. Like, it's still so low that somebody might come and go, yeah, paint's a little dingy and dinged up and whatever, but man, this price is great and these aren't big issues, so we're not bothered by it. And we've seen, I'm sure Shar has too, a range of sellers that keep their home immaculate over 20 years, and those that have lived a little more roughly in it. So let me dive into the resale analysis, the worksheet, because it also gets at some of the equity, and it just shows you a different option, and not and all saying it's the best or the right, or it's what we've been able to do, partly because our market isn't as massively high as some other areas. Oops. Let's get rid of this. Okay. All right. So this is just a hypothetical resale analysis, and it's an Excel sheet, so I can kind of change it as we go. Ooh, look at that. All right. So this I can prepare, Shar said, just with a market analysis, a number, if they just say, well, what would I roughly get? But then it's also the same thing we use when we have the final appraisal. So we always start with, what did they pay? When did they have their original home appraised, the current home? When was it originally appraised? What was the property worth at the time, and what did they pay? So here, these are old Duluth numbers, right? Like, what? But they paid 58 grand for it, and it was worth 114, and so they paid 51% of the market value in this hypothetical scenario. Okay, so now they sell. This is April 19. Very slight increase, right? Only from 114 to 136. So this is in a kind of a flat market, a short period of time. And there's the new value, what they paid. Their 25% share of that 22,000 is 5,500, and the gross price would be that. Now you'll see the things here where this is a choice, right? And there's pros and cons, just to be very clear. So we've chosen to add in the realtor commission on top of the purchase option price, so that it doesn't come out of the seller's equity, right? So you can see the pros and cons pretty clearly. Well, the seller doesn't have, doesn't have 5,000 they have to pay. The con is that the buyer has to pay 5,000 more for this house, and that house price is forever 5,000 higher, right? So you're losing affordability there. The trade-off being is that you're giving more return to the seller. At some point, that might not be sustainable, right? But we've been able to do this for a number of years because our values are lower, and therefore the percentages of commissions are lower, and we have a lot of room to work with. Another optional thing, and this definitely isn't always the case, but you'll see this plus home inspection items. We have the option, we've done a few times, where if there's a resale and there's something that's not in any way due to homeowner negligence or neglect or lack of care, maybe it was something we had intended to do when we developed the house the first time and we didn't, or it was like an oversight. Oh, there's no GFCI outlets in the kitchen. How did that even happen? And that was clearly not the homeowner's fault, whatever. We'll say that got called out for sure, so we know we're gonna address that. We're gonna, add $1,750 to the price. Again, the same trade-off. So the benefit is, it allows some work to be done to the property that's essential. The downside is it increases the price and keeps it up more. But in the situation, especially as I mentioned with some of these older homes that were crazy affordable in the beginning, but where we didn't do much work to them, we thought, we've got some room here. We don't need to make this home worth 40% of market value. We can do some work and have it worth 60% of market value and still really great. We can finally do some of these things that we didn't do the first time around. So that's just an option. It's not It's just something to kind of toss in. So then, in this case, you'll see that, oh, but wait a minute, if we do that, we're at 52%, and the original one was 51%, and our one roof policy says if we're gonna bump it up, we gotta at least stay at the same comparable value. So let's, make this, whoops, so you can just see it. I knew I was gonna do that. Let's make it 1,000. It's like, okay, well now we're at 51%, okay. And so, whoops. So now the resale price is 70,000. So from this 70,000, then we are, what do we put in for commission? 5,000. All right. So then we show them, okay, so we added that commission onto the purchase price, but you still have to pay it, right? It's not, you don't get the double benefit of it being added and not paid for, right? So it's neutral to the seller in terms of the cost, right? They don't make money on it, but they're not out the 5,000. And I think on the repairs, we said that was going to be 1,000. Okay. So here we have, this is the 70,000 resale price, the appraisal that we paid for. Typically what we'll do is we pay for the appraisal up front just to get it done and get the appraiser paid for, and then it comes out of their proceeds at sale. City of Duluth has this I&I inspection that's just on really the sump pump. We estimate closing costs. This first mortgage is what they gave us, an actual payoff amount. It's not just a hypothetical guess. So that would be plugged in. Char mentioned second mortgages, third mortgages. Almost all of our buyers have closing cost assistance loans, sometimes 2 of them. So we got those in there. We have the realtor commission that we had above, 5,000. There it is, taken off below. Same for the repairs, 1,000 above, 1,000 below. And maybe they were delinquent on, $400 in lease fees, and so. We can add that in. That's why this is nice, because it kind of forces my hand to remember, oh yeah, I got to check on that. Do they own anything? Maybe they had a party wall fee, and we have a couple of those, not many, but they're short on that. So party wall it sounds fun, doesn't it? It's not nearly as much fun as it sounds. I'll just say that. We have a handful of twin homes, so it's, they have a shared wall between them, and so most lenders require some sort of maintenance agreement for the exterior work, because you can't it's hard to do half a roof or half of a siding or something. So then they pay into a maintenance fund to replace their eventual roof and siding. And some land trusts, another totally great option is you have a maintenance fund for everybody. Even if every single family detached home, they're going to pay a certain amount into a maintenance fund, and that's going to go for future repairs. But then your CLT has to monitor that, collect it, track it, decide what's acceptable. So we've worked it successfully with our townhomes, but we don't have a lot of those. So then we give them this net proceeds sheet, resale analysis, and we say, okay, if you were to sell, you'd walk away in this $60 to $100. Yes, ma'am. It is, and the interest benefits that fund, but the fund is tied to the property and not the person. So, and yeah, right, you have more on there, right. But when they sell, they don't take that party wall account with them, because they've depreciated their siding and roof 15 years since they've been living there, and so that's money just stays for the future replacement. Yeah, it can work great, and you just have to then remember, well, now if there's another $100 a month party wall fee, I gotta make sure I price it low enough so that it's affordable. They can add that extra cost on there.
Okay, so are you only doing that maintenance account for those in the 20?
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And there are some land trusts that do them on every home, and they have some success with that, and it can be really good. We've not chosen to do that, again, there's pros and cons. It's great to have that money there when you need it, but then it's another thing where you're adding an extra requirement that isn't normal. A normal homeowner doesn't make somebody make them set aside money. Maybe they should, but we are different in that stewardship capacity. Yeah.
There could be a benefit to them if you could pool the funds and help them with the reserves for maintenance. I mean, there'd be a benefit to them.
Sure, for sure. I mean, it's a similar kind of idea of taxes and insurance. Like, escrowing for that, everybody accepts is a pretty good thing, because then the money is there when the taxes and insurance come due. So you could take the same idea as well. Eventually you're going to have home improvements, so why don't you start escrowing for it now in a maintenance fund? So when it needs to be done, the money is there. So yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So in this scenario, the value increased from 114 to 136. So the market value of the home was 114,000 when they purchased it, and they go to sell it, and now it's worth 136. So there's been $22,000 in increase in the market value of the home. So of that $22,000 increase, which is admittedly in this scenario very low, but we've had some low ones. Of that $22,000 in appreciation, they get 25% of that $22,000, which is $5,500. Plus, you see there's this line for 100% if they did any capital improvements. This example, they didn't do any. So this sheet doesn't, we could have a line that says, 75% of the appreciation reinvested in the home, but it doesn't communicate anything that the seller necessarily needs to know. I mean, it's not like secret or anything, but just this is what they're getting out of it. So if we said, hey, you did a new deck and it's $2,500, so then we would add that in on there, and then of course that's going to increase now we're up to 72,000, and now their net proceeds are 2,000 higher because they had their Yeah. So the sale price is the 72,000. So the yeah, yeah, and here's just to add one other fun complicating factor. So we speak about the land trust price, and because. So this is the land trust price now on this retail, this nice 72,000 number, but the market value was how much? Do you remember from? Woo, you guys you're with it. Actually, 136, right? Well, so Minnesota Housing, says, so the sale price has to be 136, can't be 72, because we want you to sell it for the market value. We want you to then show on the settlement statement the amount of the affordability gap that came through. So a separate class, I can show you a closing statement, but in the seller's mind, they're selling their house for $72,000. In the buyer's mind, they're paying $72,000. That's like the actual cost. But on the closing statement, it's going to say $136,000, and then it's going to say whoever quickly can do the math between 136 and 72, you know, it's going to save 58,000 in affordability gap funds. It's going to show up as a credit to the buyer and as a debit from the seller. And that's just again, it's that it shows our funder, you know, this is how much affordability gap there was in the process. And so part of it is also trying to, like, I have to know how all this works behind the scenes, but not overwhelm, you know, folks with the information. But that's another piece of it where we have to do that. Yep.
So, how many years after you would say
This was like 8 years or something like that. And this. Oh yeah, this was on here. First mortgage. So that's what they've paid off. And if you recall, it was $58,000 for what they paid. 98% of our buyers finance 100% of the land trust price, and then they borrow a 0% loans to pay for closing costs, which would be what these two guys are. So in this scenario, they paid off $8,000 on their mortgage in those 8 years that they own the home or whatever. Yeah, if that makes sense.
So when at the very end, when you said that or what their
Net proceeds, yeah.
were 6,000, that's coming out of so they're paying the 8,000. So
That's what they're.
they're walking away with less than what they've paid in mortgage. So
Right, because of this 5,000 here, because they, and this is not just land trust, this is anybody, but like they're starting out in the hole, unless they brought their own money, right? Which of course they can do. Like, we encourage them, like, hey, if you want to just pay your closing costs up front out of your own money, then you're not going to have this later loan that you have to pay back. But most of them don't, and because most of them can get a 0% loan for closing costs, no interest, no payments, it's like, yeah, well, back to the class from this morning, about $1,000 in, and you can own a home. So we do always are clear on that, saying, and this isn't just land trust, but it's not a smart idea, except for this crazy market we're in, whatever, for a couple of years, but anybody that's going to buy a home and turn around and sell it as is in a year is not a good plan, right? Because you're paying all these closing costs to buy it. Just like people tell you, well, don't refinance and then sell in a year. That doesn't make any sense. You pay all these closing costs. So generally, saying you want to be in there long enough so that you're ahead of the game on the closing costs that you had to pay to get in. And so obviously the longer they stay in, the bigger that net proceeds are. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So it gets back to my very first point, which is to try to make it as affordable as possible on the front end, so that even if the market downturns, it's not going to fall below what the land trust program price was, right? I mean, it is possible if that happens, then it's really dire. But if you're starting out and you're selling the home $50,000 below market value right out of the gate, then different land trusts can do it differently. We don't penalize the seller if the value of the home has decreased because of the market, right? It just means they'll get 25% of negative 10,000, which is it's going to be zero for us, right? So we don't make them lower their resale price. So that is one benefit, which comes up from time to time because most often people always say, well, in a massively increasing market, I'm only at 25%. It's like, yeah, that's how it works. But you're also, of course, paying far less for this home than you would have. But also, in a massively decreasing market, you are not losing your house, right? You're not losing all of your equity. Right? That's a good question, good clarification, because we have had some of that. Shall we dive into some scenarios with our last time? Since let's see where we are. Yeah, gosh, and just say also, I will volunteer, Shar, too. I know we'd be very happy to talk specifics, just sometimes it's like, okay, I got to go deeper on this one point, and I got to understand it better. But so very happy to follow up on how we handle things. Last thing I'll say is on the credit for capital improvements, which is a thorny issue, and there's a class on it tomorrow. What we've done, and we've run the same thing, like, well, this is how much I paid. Here's all my receipts. Like, I don't need your receipts, and it has to be what's valued. And after a few futile efforts of trying to implement a policy where they would report it at the time that the improvement happened, which never seemed to work, we just have it at resale, and we have the appraiser at resale identify anything that qualified as a capital improvement that they did in their ownership period. So it's very simple, and it's moderately satisfying to all parties, right? So they never quite think that the deck that they did, they get enough credit, or the air conditioning that they did, or the beautiful gardens that they did that don't have any value from an appraisal. But they're getting more than they would have if we were strict with our policy and said, well, you never even contacted us about this, so therefore you get nothing, right? We said, okay, well, we can give you the credit based on what this appraisal says. So if an appraiser identifies it and says it's worth something, and they're going to typically, they're not, the appraisers haven't come back with crazy high numbers because the improvements are generally modest, and we also clarify the distinction between maintenance and a capital improvement. So, I'd replace the furnace, I did the water heater, no, sorry, maintenance. Well, it's the storm door I fixed, maintenance. We painted this room, maintenance. So yeah.
I just recently had to kind of put together, because the capital improvements conversation just keeps coming back around. So I actually had to put together a list of what is considered capital improvements and what are homeowner improvements. And a lot of the things that were just on the homeowner improvements just kind of blew me, because I just knew that a pool and a jacuzzi would add value to your home. But no, they are homeowner improvements. Certain lighting, certain types of decks, certain types of siding to your home. So I just wanted to say that as well to kind of decipher the two. For scenario one, and then you guys can just give me feedback on how you would handle the situation, okay? So I'm just going to read it. For scenario one, Tom Doe, I changed these names. Tom Doe has been a homeowner since 2016 and is ready to sell his home. He owns a townhome and claims to have done capital improvement projects costing $42,000. In materials, the project was never reported nor approved by the CLT. Tom would like a full refund for capital improvements in addition to his appraisal value. Tom also states he was unaware of the 25-75% equity split between the homeowner and CLT at the time of resale and demands 100% of his appraisal value. How would you handle this situation? Because some of this, a good portion of it, right, is going to just boil back down to that paperwork, that you signed saying you acknowledged and you understood. I've had the conversations get kind of hot topic like that in lawyers. I even got reported to the Attorney General. I said, oh, they're gonna get me. No. But I did have to put together just a well put together correspondence, in return to that, when it boils down to that. Okay, we can go on to scenario two. Can you slide it up a little bit for me? No? Okay, maybe not. All right, maybe that's just me. All right, so for scenario two, we got Sandy Doe now. Has been living in her home since 2018. Sandy has given notice of intent to sell due to her moving to another state. During the initial conversation, Sandy lets me know that this sale is time sensitive due to her moving out of state. Also, due to her financial hardship, she is considering letting the house go into foreclosure. While preparing Sandy's resale calculation and net proceeds, it is discovered that Sandy is upside down in her proceeds and owes $17,000. How would you handle the situation? And we actually ended up not necessarily writing it off, but we altered, not altered, but moved around some numbers to try to break it even, meaning that realtor, all those fees and stuff we were talking about, we didn't use a realtor, right? So that X'd out a good chunk of that money. I think I took away the resale admin fee, so that's another 1,000 off the table. So I kind of moved some of the adjustable things around to try to get it as close to breaking even as possible. Somebody, and we're only in 2023, only been living there since 2018. They haven't really invested, that much towards the principal to really see a significant change or a decent amount of return. All right, scenario 3, we got Charles Doe. Is a home. Charles Doe is a homeowner who has been living in the home since 2015. Charles has attempted to sell in the past, but was unsuccessful. Charles' property sat on the market for 9 months with no real interest. The reviews from the people who were attending the open house tours felt the home had too much clutter, didn't like the dark paint, an unpleasant cat smell. It's 2023 and Charles would like to attempt to sell again. How would you handle this situation and what changes would you make? The first thing I had to do was hire somebody to come and deep clean, because the cat smell can get serious. Thank you. Good word. We ended up taking care of it. Yep, we did. And sometimes you might get some folks that just can't afford some of these things, and we're trying to just help move the process along. So we got Betty Doe now, has been living in the home since 2008. Betty put in her notice of intent to sell. The resale calculation and net proceeds document have been prepared. Her display that she will be earning $30,000 in equity profit. Okay, Betty and her realtor have attended all the meetings and are ready to list. How will we handle this? Gold star. Thank you.
All right. We had to end on a positive note. So I would just say, last comment is, of course, we mention the difficult ones or the hard homeowners, whatever, but honestly, 95% of our resales have been awesome. The sellers have loved their experience. They love knowing that they're helping somebody else out who was in the same situation they were in. It's been a great story for us to tell. A really successful part of the model is the resales. Out of the picture, and we buy the house back from the lender, and they definitely get nothing. Like if it's all the way gone through the foreclosure process. If they're trying to sell and they're underwater, then it's kind of the option that Shar mentioned. Like you could step in and buy it back at a price that makes it neutral, and then you as the steward of the property have to decide if that's a good use of your funding, because you're probably going to have to pull in some other funding source to cover that shortfall. And there might be reasons, and like Justin was saying, maybe there's certain exceptional situations where you go, yeah, this is warranted. And there might be a situation where we feel like, nope, this really is not a good use of our funds, and if it may just need to go through a foreclosure. But anytime they're behind more than 30 days on their house payments, it's going to affect their credit for anybody, so that's always a key piece. We've never had a situation where what was left on their mortgage was more than what the house was worth. So we've never run into that situation.